The Ukrainian forces launched a counterattack in the direction of Klishchiivka, where here they have actually launched attacks in the direction of Kardioivka and have managed to re-enter Klishchiivka here from the south. So the Ukrainian forces have here negated the gains the Russian forces made after they made their own counterattack to the Ukrainian counteroffensive in the direction of Bakhmut. So this is a clear indication that the Ukrainian reinforcements have arrived, which allowed them to then make a new push, allowing them to enter Klishchiivka and Kardioivka, and the Russians were pushed back to the villages of Andriivka, Klishchiivka and Kardioivka, attempting to hold the line there. But it seems that the Ukraine managed to get a foothold inside of Klishchiivka, allowing them to now attack and advance further in the southern direction, as they will have no cover fire from the north, from the direction of Klishchiivka. Moving on to the direction of the Dnieper River, the Ukrainians have here launched some sort of operation where they've managed to actually capture the middle island here to the north of the village of Kosachi, to the northeast of Kherson. So here they have managed to actually capture the whole middle island in between the Dnieper River and the Kherson mainland here to the south of the Dnieper River. So here they are very close to actually entering the mainland, and they have managed to push the Russian forces back from the coastline here, so they may be able to enter the Kherson mainland. So these two things, combined with the recent Ukrainian advances north of Robotyne as well as in the direction of Voroshaine, where they've managed to capture most of the village here to the north, and there is a tank battle I want to showcase later. But essentially what we're seeing is now the Ukrainian forces have started their quote-unquote main push. And by started it, I mean they are doing their final preparations before they actually launch it. We are closing in on the middle of August, which is the final month of summer. At the same time, we are also looking at Ukraine trying to cross across the Dnieper River. They are trying to get their positions, their foothold there. They are trying to push hard on Klishchiivka, try to capture it to the south of Bakhmut. So it seems that the Ukrainians are actually planning a four-pronged main push. They are going to be spreading their army out to these 4 points, and each one of them will have their own main push with whatever equipment and units the Ukrainians have left. Based on the numbers we have, the Ukrainians still have more than 60% of their equipment, and they still have more than 60% of their infantry. If they launch all of these at the same time, each of these areas could see an army of up to 25 to 30,000 troops in combination with the necessary equipment to launch these offensives. So this would be a 120,000 strong Ukrainian push at one time. That is, the question is whether they can coordinate it on such a wide front, because it is in between the direction of Bakhmut and all the way south to Kherson across the Dnieper River. There's also the possibility of having a significant force in reserve that would, instead of trying to push with the original push, the main push, wait to see if there's a breakthrough in any of these directions to then go and support that area. In that case, it would be somewhere around 10 to 15,000 on each of these areas, with a significant force in Zaporizhia and in the Kramatorsk area. So the Kramatorsk area would choose between Bakhmut or the Remelsky Lech area, and the Zaporizhia would choose between the Zaporizhia defensive line or the Kherson area. There's also the possibility of the Kherson being separate from these other three, which the Ukrainians could then put a significant force in Pavlograd or Dnipro or Zaporizhia, who then would choose between these three areas, and then the Kherson region being of itself would have somewhere around to 20,000 troops trying to push through and flank the Russian army from the south. The Ukrainians are also consistently attacking the bridges here to the south, north of Crimea. They have actually managed to hit two of them, which I showcased in an earlier video, which would limit the supplies for the Russian forces from Crimea to the north. If the Ukrainians then launch an attack here by the borderline of Crimea towards the north to try to cut Crimea off from the Zaporizhia and Kherson regions, then they would be much easier with the bridges blown than if not, because then it would be difficult for the Russians to actually launch reinforcements to the area. To get a more micro analysis into this, so what we'll most likely see is that we see here in the Kherson area that the Ukrainian forces have reached the middle islands, taking control over the middle islands in two areas. The first one is here to the southwest of the Antonovsky Bridge, where they would be attacking directly into the villages of Voleshki and others here in the area, straight ahead of Kherson. So they could gather a large force in Kherson and then go across with speedboats or whichever crossing equipment they have, and then build up supplies in the middle island, after which they can use amphibious vehicles to cross the final river to then launch offensives into the Kherson mainland. Then here to the northeast of Kherson, we have the second area of which there could be a crossing, here to the south of Tokarivka and Ponyantivka, to the direction of Kosachi Laheri. So here the Ukrainian forces have managed to gain full control over the middle island. This happened yesterday, and as such they would be able to then push across and make some sort of amphibious landing here. So this would be a two-pronged attack from the north and to the center of Kherson, and then they would be looking to push the Russian forces back and gain positions here to the east, after which they would go southwards. So this would be the northern one, then the southern one or central one would go here through the center and then push directly towards Crimea. So then they would be able to cut off both of the main roads from the west and from the east. So this would most likely be some sort of direction they would be attacking in, or their objective here across the Dnieper River. Then moving on to the central part here by Oryhiv, the direction in which the Ukrainian forces were looking to attack in is to first capture Robotyne, then push towards Verbove and try to cross the first line of defense here in this direction, after which they will try to move on to the main road from two directions, from the Robotyne area as well as from the eastern area, and then they'll be pushing in two directions. It seems that they have somewhat given up on the northwestern part because they have so far been unable to close in on Vasilivka. If you look at my positions map mode, we see that Vasilivka is the main village ahead of the first line of defense. If the Ukrainians are unable to capture Vasilivka, it will be very difficult for them to actually hold on and try to launch an offensive through the first line of defense of Russian forces from that area. So unless the Russian forces withdraw from there, then it would be very difficult for them to gain control of it. And if you look at the defensive positions map, then you will see that there's a lot of trenches and fortifications here to the north of Vasilivka. So the Russian forces were aware of the importance of Vasilivka, and as such they have prepared necessary defenses in the area. It is essentially as well defended as Robotyne, and we've seen that the Ukrainians with their main forces have been unable to capture Robotyne for 2 months. So going for Vasilivka is essentially a pipe dream unless the Russian forces withdraw behind the first line of defense. But then that would be in case the Ukrainians are already attacking the village of Tokmak here to the south. To the Staromayorsk area, we see here that the Ukrainian forces are closing in on Staromanivka. Here it is similar to importance of Staromanivka, similar to that of Vasilivka. If the Ukrainians are able to reach Staromanivka and capture it, then they would be able to actually make a push towards the main line of defense. That's mainly because most of the supplies goes through the northern parts through Staromanivka. This is why we've seen them mostly stop attacks in this whole area and just push southwards here, because they realize that if they manage to actually capture Staromanivka, then the Russians will be forced to pull away from all of these areas, after which the Ukrainians could launch an offensive on the first main line of defense. So it is clear that that is their focus here, but before moving on to the Bakhmut area, let's take a look at this tank battle. It seems to be from the Ukrainian perspective, as we can see that the way the village turns a bit to the left, which indicates that on the map that is from the Ukrainian perspective. So we see two Ukrainian tanks attacking what looks like one Russian tank. It is difficult to actually see where the Russian tank is due to all of the smoke rising and generally the poor quality zoomed out view from the drone. But it seems that both of these tanks are dueling each other right now. And then on the eastern side as well, there's some sort of duel between a Ukrainian tank and a Russian tank in the forest patch. And generally from this, we see that they are shooting a lot back and forth. There's some maneuvering, and it takes them a very long time to actually end this battle. And there's no clear evidence as to which side wins this battle. as it ends. And as I said from the start, it is very difficult to actually see the Russian tanks from this drone perspective. Finally, moving on to the direction of Bakhmut, we see here that the Ukrainian forces are doing a two-pronged attack, and both are in the southern flank. First towards Klishchiivka, trying to capture it, the second direction of Kurdyumivka/Andreevka. So it seems that they are attempting to either bypass Klishchiivka to the south or try to push northwards from Klishchiivka through Klishchiivka and towards the southern parts of Bakhmut. Even if the case happens that the Ukrainians manage to capture Klishchiivka, then they will be able to start launching attacks into Bakhmut itself. They will also be able to push towards the defensive line of Opitno, Dradivka, and Mykolaiivka Druha. Although the fortifications here are unknown, we do see that there is built heavy fortifications south of Kodema between Dacha and Semhirka. So we see that the Russians have definitely not been idle here in the backline. They've been building fortifications throughout the months of fighting here by Klishchiivka and Kurdyumivka. So this may indicate that although I have multiple times said if Klishchiivka falls, the whole south of Bakhmut falls, now they have built fortifications, which could indicate that they will be able to actually hold the line here in the south. But this again may be where they may launch a major offensive here to the south, try to push through, break through the Russian defenses and cut off the supplies by this intersection here, which would cut off essentially all supplies of the Russian forces towards Bakhmut. So that would be the win condition of the Ukrainian forces in this direction. So we're seeing the Ukrainians plan some sort of offensive in all of these four areas. We're seeing them build up their troops from the start of August till now. And we're also seeing that we're closing in on the end of summer. There is a lot of pressure from Western countries. There's the upcoming Ukrainian Independence Day. There are so many factors that point towards the Ukrainians launching their main push. When will it happen? I don't know. Where it will happen? All four areas. Where will it succeed? I don't know. If it even will. That is going to be all for this update. Thank you all for watching and have a great day.